Good, good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this special 9 a.m. segment on this 15th day of April 2021, and streaming live to you from Brisbane. As we know, weather is looking very, very good, and hey, it's an historic day once again here in Queensland as the masks come off today. But we are warned to be careful and keep them very, very handy as well. But before we look at all of those news, let's take a very quick look at the weather and let's see what the weather has in store for us for today. With that, let's welcome to Dilraj.
Good morning everyone. Weather forecast for the rest of today is maximum 28 degree. Brisbane area is mostly sunny with no chance of any rain. Light winds becoming northeasterly 15 to 20 km per hour in the middle of the day and then becoming light in the evening. Fire danger is low to moderate. Sun protection is recommended till 10 to 3 and UV index is predicted to reach 7, that is high. Till tomorrow, stay safe and enjoy the rest of your day.
And thank you very much for that update, Dilraj. Right now, moving on, we will take a look at what's been happening, with this latest news of the masks coming off today. So as we know, that it is good news that the masks do come off today, but what's happening with that? So experts are urging people not to throw away their masks despite the requirement to wear them in public officially ends this morning or ended this morning. So, the mask requirements, one of the strategies put in place to halt the spread of cases from the recent twin clusters stemming from Brisbane's Prince Alexandra Hospital. So it was kept along with restricted visits to hotels, hospitals and nursing homes, even after a 3-day lockdown which ended once community transmission levels fell to a very comfortable level. Premier Anastasia Palaszczuk congratulated Queenslanders on the following the mandates and keeping everything, and asked them to still wear masks if they were unable to socially distance. I would like everyone, if you are going to a public place like a shopping centre or in a public transport, and if you feel like putting on your mask on, please do so, she said. And Griffith University infectious diseases expert Nigel Macmillan said Queenslanders and Australians are more used to wearing masks these days. We are in a luxurious position of not really needing masks at this particular time because we have no community transmission, so which is a good news. But people should feel comfortable wearing masks in many parts of Asia. Totally normal to wear masks during cold and flu seasons, and we are coming into winter once again. So this may be something that people will help them feel that way anyway. So Marta, Health Infectious Disease Director Paul Griffin said, while lifting the mask mandate was a good thing, people still need to socially distance and prevent the spread of virus snuck out into the community again. It will still be a good idea going forward to have the mask on in case you can't socially distance, particularly if you are having a prolonged indoor close contact, Dr. Griffin said. This means mainly things like public transport, ride-share vehicles, airline travel, anywhere you are in a prolonged close contact with people. And Southeast Queensland has had 2 short periods of lockdown so far in 2021, with masks mandated on both occasions before the mask mandate was relaxed. However, with disruptions to the federal vaccine rollout, and the question still is being asked about how the virus jumped the quarantine to form 2 clusters linked to Brisbane's Prince Alexandra Hospital, sparking the most recent lockdown. Queenslanders were urged to put on their mask in the bottom drawer, not just yet. Don't throw away masks. Keep them handy just in case. These relaxations are not a confirmation that the risk of COVID-19 has gone. No way. It just shows that we can trust people to make the right decision. So there you are. It is good that the rules have been relaxed, but as said before, that we really need to remain vigilant and keep in place all the things. Well, right now, moving on, let's take a look at some of the stories making headline today, and we will begin by the top stories.
Some of your headlines, and the federal opposition has pledged $80 million to reduce Indigenous incarceration rates 30 years after a royal commission into the issue handed down its report. But the Minister for Indigenous Australians says improving education and health outcomes for First Nations people will help. More than 470 Indigenous people have died in custody since the report, 5 since the start of last month.
Supporters of a high-profile Tamil family on Christmas Island have accused the Morrison government of cruelty, saying they are shocked that a planned visit by a Labor senator was derailed. Christina Keneally was all set to travel next week to visit the family, who have been detained for 3 years. But the Defence Minister Peter Dutton told Senator Keneally yesterday the government plane was not available because it was undergoing maintenance.
Tourism operators along WA's Coral Coast say they'll struggle to survive, with the devastation of cyclone Saroja adding to the hit they took from long border closures through the pandemic. More than 2/3 of buildings were damaged in the coastal town of Kalbarri, and authorities are urging Australians to avoid the tourist hub while the clean-up continues.
Restrictions have eased across Queensland this morning. The state will be free of mandatory mask wearing, and people will once again be able to visit their loved ones in hospitals and aged care homes. The rules were imposed during a snap 3-day lockdown in Greater Brisbane after a coronavirus outbreak was linked to the Princess Alexandra Hospital late last month.
So as we are coming out of that lockdown, as reported before, it will be upon us to make sure that we do the right thing and always keep up the social distancing, and of course, if you are going to some public events, make sure that you observe those rules. But right now, in Western Australia, there are some incredible tales of survival. Let's take a look at those.
For more than 15 years, Colleen Stanton has enjoyed ocean views from her living room.
It's not very safe up here, I don't think.
But on Sunday night, she had a frightening front row seat to tropical cyclone Saroja's destruction.
Very freaky. First of all, it was flooding here with the water coming through, so I just ran straight into my pantry over there. The door was banging and the ceiling was coming down over here, and I could hear everything lifting and banging, and it was freaky. I thought I have to make it down because everything's lifting, so I just made it in time.
After fleeing down the stairs to safety, she's among many in Kalbarri, counting themselves lucky to be alive.
I'm glad my nan's here.
I nearly blew off, didn't I?
She almost flew,
Flew away like Mary Poppins. Yeah, but everybody's safe, it's good.
Yeah.
Just down the road, Margaret Burgess is sorting through what's left of her family's home office. The roof was torn off.
You know, you can't imagine the strength of that wind to be able to do that.
Saroja made landfall as a Category 3 cyclone, an unusual event for towns this far south in Western Australia.
There were 5 of us and 3 dogs in a little passage downstairs on a single bed mattress, all reacting differently. I probably was sitting there catatonic. My granddaughter was hysterical. My husband had a can of beer in his hand. You know, we all reacted differently.
And as we do, everyone reacts differently to the situation, but our heart goes out to them and hope the recovery and the efforts, especially with the IDF assisting there, would be speedy, and that everyone gets back to their normality as soon as they can. Well, for the next news, the vaccine, of course, how are we going to go about, getting that? So Prime Minister proposes max vaccine sanitizers. Let's have a look at that report.
In Australia, we're looking forward to 2021, getting Australia at the front of the pack when it comes to vaccines. The first dose will be administered by the end of October. That's what I meant.
Over the coming 6 weeks, we seek to address all of the aged care centres in Australia.
This is a really, really exciting time.
More than 7 weeks later, the excitement is waning. The first stage of vaccination for aged care and frontline workers in health and quarantine is still underway, and there's no longer a clear deadline for the broader rollout.
We have 145,000 residents across 1,650 visits to aged care facilities so far.
It's about half It's about half of the aged care residents?
All up we have 180,000 aged care residents. Some of those are second doses which have been completed.
Now the Prime Minister is looking at an old idea with new eyes.
If those supply lines hold up, and that is something outside the government's control, then we will have a substantial number of vaccines in the fourth quarter of this year. That is why we'll have to change our delivery method, because we would like to see this done before the end of the year, but that will only be possible if we can ensure that we have the max vaccination program in place that can do that in that space of that final quarter.
Mass vaccination programs run from places like stadiums have been core to the rollout in countries like the US and the UK, but till now not endorsed by our federal leaders.
We're dealing with elderly Australians. We're not going to put them in buses and take them off to, military sites and, have them herded into tents where they're going to be vaccinated. No, they're going to go to their GP.
They've got to get people around the table and adjust their strategy accordingly. It might mean mass vaccination centres of the type you see in pretty much every country I'm looking at around the world.
The states are forging ahead with their own mass vaccination plans, and national cabinet meetings will hopefully figure out a national strategy.
There's the option to work, and I've discussed this with at least one Premier, about how mass vaccination could be an option earlier, say in June or July, for those over 50 groups.
And that might be the way forward. We'll just have to wait and see how it goes. Well, right now, Prime Minister is being busy with the vaccination and everything, but he felt sort of making that apology.
And an update on Australia Post following our interview with the former Chief Executive Christine Holgate, who told me this last night.
Maybe if the Prime Minister's watching, he could give me a call, and I'd love an apology.
We invited the Australia Post chairman as well as the Prime Minister for an interview today. They both declined. In the meantime, when asked about whether he'd apologised to Ms Holgate, this is what the Prime Minister had to say.
It was not my intention to cause distress to Christine Holgate, and I regret any distress that strong language may have caused to her, indeed did cause to her. That was not my intention. What this issue was about the appropriate way that taxpayers' money and taxpayer companies are run. And so there were serious issues there.
And of course, there's always those issues that has to deal with doing the right thing. And of course, there are comments that are made about people. And I'm choosing my words here about people. So, it should not be discriminatory that, if you can make a remark about someone, but then if he or she is of a different gender, then different rules applies. But I firmly believe rules should be in workplace and industrial relations. Rules should be the same for everyone. Well, right now, moving on, let's take a look at a situation which is now evolving, which means that during the pandemic, there were many landlords, including ours, who gave people a subsidized or a reduced rent period. But right now, they are bringing that back. So the pressure will be on small businesses now. One, the JobKeeper going away. Number two, the reduced rents are going away. So the cost of running a business is very high. especially here in Australia. It is very hard and it is very challenging. So, all small business owners. Yesterday I was at a consultation meeting with this government small business department, and these were few of the things that we were discussing, that how hard, and if it isn't for the personal efforts of a lot of small businesses, that they put in extraordinary long hours, weekends, day in, day out, that those businesses would not survive. So here's a report on that situation.
The cakes are cheerful, but the owner of this franchised bakery is stressed.
I think it's with the corona and stuff. People haven't got much money to spend. They're still a bit scared of another lockdown. We used to get like around 250 customers a day, but now we're struggling to get even 150 a day.
Pranay Mahajan was getting reduced rent from his landlord, shopping centre giant Vicinity, but he's now back paying the full amount despite sales being down 20%.
We have to put money from your pocket to run the business. It's really stressful, especially in the shopping centre. I know a few people that are closing down just because of the rent.
The chain's boss says that despite many of its 84 stores not earning what they were before the pandemic, all but 2 are back to paying full rent.
That's proving pretty hard at the moment, especially with the potential for short and sharp lockdowns.
The end of rental concessions is coinciding with the loss of an industry code that made landlords negotiate with smaller companies.
And that makes it really tough. Their backs against the wall.
Shopping centres alone waived $2 billion in rent for their tenants during the peak of the crisis, but half of that might have to be paid back. High street stores were also given concessions.
I'm very understanding with my landlord that he also has bills to pay.
But now this salon owner is paying more rent than ever before.
As of November, our rent went back to normal, and then with a little bit extra each time for the deferred rent.
It's not uncommon for us to hear from our small and medium-sized businesses that their rent is higher than what it was prior to COVID, despite the fact that we aren't seeing those increases in foot traffic, especially in CBD and tourist locations.
Major retailers are reportedly cutting deals, even as their sales go up. Developer Scott Spanton has been privy to tense rental negotiations, one involving a major company.
They had a lease expiring this year, and they've renegotiated a rent deal from $1.6 million down to around $900,000 a year in rent for a 7-year deal with $5 million of cash up front. So that was a massive concession that's cost that landlord in the order of $10 to $15 million.
He says some smaller players are getting in on the action.
We've seen rents of $110,000, $120,000 a year being reduced down to $80,000 a year.
It's difficult to know what rental concessions are really being given because the landlords won't talk. The business approached a dozen of them, including Vicinity. None would speak to us or comment on individual tenancies. Even the shopping centre industry's lobby group declined an interview, saying that rental concessions are being handled on a case-by-case basis.
If we want an active economy, we need to make sure that those small and medium-sized businesses are just as looked after as people that have power.
Landlords have returns they need to make, I get that. They're owners, they get a return on their investment. It's not going to help if there are for lease signs and vacant stores all over the place.
Pranay Mahajan hopes to stay open.
We're not sure how long we're going to run this business. There's always stress, maybe there's another lockdown.
After 5 years, he just wants to celebrate his bakery's 6th birthday.
And as we know, that situation is not unique to Pranay. It is happening all around. With the JobKeeper going and the rents coming back up and reduced income because people are still not advertising or doing things that they used to do before. So the expenditure or the income level is not there. So it becomes very, very hard for people to survive and move forward. Well, right now let's take a look at a message from our sponsors.
GlobeNet Realty. GlobeNet Realty has been the longest established, trusted and respected agency in its trade area. Washa Chandra, Director of GlobeNet Realty, provides honest and ethical service to her customers. If you are thinking of investing in Brisbane real estate market, or if you are seeking professional property management, then you should contact Usha Chandra today on landline 3865 4466 or mobile 0419 775 416. And for further updates, log on to our website www.globenetralty.com.au. GlobeNet Realty is your own local real estate agency. Situated at Shop 52281 Sandgate Road, Boondall. GlobeNet Realty. Real estate is our world.
And real estate is the world, as we saw yesterday, all the updates with Usha Chandra of GlobeNet Realty. Well, right now, moving on, 30 years from the Royal Commission, where are we today? Have we moved forward?
Auntie Sherry was an energetic woman. She was always on the go. Growing up, she was just an auntie. But it was in the later life that I appreciated her ability to do her own thing, live life, and, enjoy it.
Nathan was the best big brother anyone could have, best son, best grandson, and best father. He was counting down to his release. He said, "I'll see you guys in 2 weeks," and that 2 weeks never did come. It's hard for anyone to lose anyone unexpectedly, but it's harder when they're alone. And he was alone.
She died in custody, and then that roll-on effect of what we were about to face, that was the most scariest part for me.
Across the country, First Nations families are united by grief.
It was hard to really acknowledge her death as a human, because it was already forced into that Black Deaths in custody scenario.
Let's get that message out there. Enough is enough. Australia will not tolerate anymore.
6 months after his auntie died in a Brisbane police cell, Darren Brady finds himself on the front line of a protest movement.
Growing up, I remember, as a family, we would always be a part of those spaces, those protests. We were always there, but always in the back. And then it was interesting to see how we were literally forced. You could feel it. We were forced to be right there at the front.
5 Aboriginal people in the last 4 weeks. 4 weeks.
Nationwide, people are taking to the streets. It's a new generation with a decades-old message. In the 80s, a similar movement was gaining traction.
About 200 people took part in the march, which started in the inner-city suburb of Redfern.
There was a whole lot of anger across Australia in Aboriginal communities. Many of the leaders were a bit obviously frustrated and perplexed because the number of deaths that were occurring seemed to be all occurring in police custody. People were starting to believe that police were killing people.
Any inquiry which did not have the status of a Royal Commission would be unacceptable.
When Bob Hawke announced a Royal Commission in 1987, it was supposed to be a turning point. Labor Senator Pat Dodson was one of the commissioners.
What is the obligation of a prison officer, police officer, or a nurse or a doctor or someone who takes, if you're in care, if you're in custody, what are the obligations you have to that person in custody? So, because that was not understood.
More than 450 First Nations people have died in custody since the inquiry delivered its findings, 5 since the start of last month. These are just some of their faces. The inquiry made more than 300 recommendations. A review found around 2/3 have since been implemented. But many of the recommendations remain overlooked, including hanging points in some prison cells, arrests for minor offences like swearing, and the granting of bail.
So there we are. After the royal inquiry, we are still far off the mark. So we have not reached the target. There is still, well, of course, a lot of recommendations have been implemented, but it has not been implemented to its full degree. Well, the one way to look at this kind of offenders and what needs to be done, of course, anyone who is an offender has to face the consequences. Punishment has to be put in place. But how do we move forward? Here's what Logan City and the local police have been able to do with young offenders.
Once a week, this is where you'll find some of Logan's youth offenders.
Wheels, handlebars, tubes, all good?
Not on the street, instead spending the afternoon with police by choice.
So these kids are what we call tertiary offenders, so they're in the youth justice system. They have committed offences, they have been to the court system, and some of them have been to juvie.
Sergeant Mick Newell's hoping for the last time. It's why he developed Pedals Up, a program for 11 to 14-year-olds where they restore bikes seized by police.
Instead of going to juvie or something like that, this is a good opportunity, to get your head in the right place.
Over 8 weeks, the bikes are stripped back, repaired and repainted.
I got a choice between mountain bike or BMX. I chose BMX. They asked what colour. I said black and blue rims.
But the program isn't all about appearances.
Each part of the bike is also a life skill that we teach them. So the frame, for example, is mental health. The frame has to be strong, it has to be resilient. The wheels, they make the bike go forward, they roll. So they're all about where are you going to go in life.
The program's also about breaking down barriers.
Working with Mick and all that, changing my perspective on police and that.
You can really work with them and get to know them and understand some of the issues they've got and work through them sort of personally with them.
At the end, if they meet their goals, they get to keep the bike, hopefully steering them in the right direction in life.
We can give them the ability to make a choice and hope that choice is the right choice. We can't save people, we can't make the choices for them.
That ultimately is up to them. Jessica Stewart, ABC.
And of course, that is a good move. We can see fixing bikes is a very good hobby and very good skills that people could acquire. And the good part is if they fix it, they get to keep it. Wow, that's a good move. And I think looking at Logan Police, they're doing what they have done, reaching out to the young offenders. Look, okay, you have done the wrong thing, so you get the punishment. But of course, moving forward, how do we do things so that they don't reoffend? How do they also feel part of the community and connection back with the community? I think that is very good, and that is something that Logan Police needs to be commended on. Well, right now, as we know, it's Ram Navami time, and all the temples and mandirs are getting together for the 9 nights, and it's a wonderful thing that this year it has coincided with Ramadan. With the Muslim community. So it is all about breaking down barriers, understanding each other's cultures, and respecting each other's cultures as well. Here's a glimpse of our short performance at Gayatri Mandir on Tuesday night. Apologies for the quality. It's been taken off Facebook. Yes, as I said before, that's our group there. I don't know, that guy on the tabla looked a bit familiar. Well, right now, let's take a look at some of the functions and events taking place right here in and around Brisbane. So, ladies and gentlemen, that's all we have time for in this segment. Don't forget that at 10 a.m. we have our weekly travel updates, and there's lots to talk about. So, at 10 a.m. the travel updates with Tanvi Goyal. So, look forward to that. It's goodbye from this segment, and until the next segment, it is goodbye. Please remain safe.